This is a process. Creating a life you love, listening to your own voice, building a life that's authentic to you is something we're always going to be doing. There's realities of our life. We all have to wear pants. But the thing about it is we don't have to wear those pants. Like, you don't have to wear the ones in your closet that don't fit anymore, or that are itchy, or that are too small, or you don't like, or that someone gave you as a gift and you feel too bad to donate them. There are 1,000 bazillion different options of pants in the world, and it's not selfish or entitled to want to find pants that fit you. And the same way is true about life.
Hey friends, and welcome to the Paula Ferris Show. I'm your host, Paula Ferris, and wow, we stirred it up just a little bit last week talking about whether or not we should give our kids a safe space to drink. You guys have been sending me so many DMs, lots of thoughts about it. Thank you for sharing it. We will continue to have conversations that you are talking about as parents. Next week, we start a 2-part series on how we can connect with our tween and teen boys. You will not want to miss it. And thank you also to those of you who have reached out to me to ask about my sweet dog, Addie. If you get my personal newsletter, I mentioned that we had an accident. I hit sweet little Addison with my car. She's going to be okay, but she has a fractured pelvis. She is on strict cage rest, or she's in the doggy stroller, which if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to show you a quick little peek into how she's doing. Sweet Addie. She's in my doggy stroller right here. And she's in good spirits, but it's a long road to recovery, sweetheart. You've got a lot of people thinking about you and praying for you, but just so grateful that she had so many guardian angels watching over her and that she just has a fractured pelvis. It could have been a lot worse after hitting her with my car, and I felt horrible about it. So let me put her back in her little doggy carrier, her doggy stroller, which is adorable. But I wrote about that in my personal newsletter, and I love encouraging you through my personal newsletter. If you're not getting it, make sure you sign up at paulaferrisofficial.com. All right, this week, 3 steps to creating the life that you love. So you guys know that a couple of years ago, my family, my husband and I and our 3 kids, we left New York City and we moved to a small town in South Carolina. We have created a life that we love. Has there been a lot of gain in this season? So much gain, but there have also been things that we have given up to, but we've created a life that we love. And the point is, we get to decide, friends. We get to decide what we want to do with our life, with those big decisions and the small decisions. And that's what we're talking about in today's conversation with Stephanie May Wilson. She is a mom of 2. She is an author of a new book called Create a Life That You Love, a beautiful cover. And she's also a podcaster. It's a podcast called Girls Night. But Stephanie is going to talk about how we can create a life that we love. And those 4 powerful words that you get to decide. Because how often are we making a decision based on what we think somebody else wants for our life, or we're making a decision that's not authentic to us? Friends, we get to decide. I hope you're encouraged by this conversation. I know I was. And by the way, Stephanie is doing the thing. She's moving to Spain with her family and her 2 little girls. And wait until you hear why. Without further ado, our new friend, Stephanie May Wilson, on the 3 steps to creating a life that we love. I feel like we honestly met 5 minutes ago, and I feel like we're already fast friends.
Same. Like, okay, love at first sight. Here we go.
I mean, we came kind of dressed in similar colors. So like we are really simpatico.
We're on the same page. Yeah.
I almost just said on the same page. Jinx.
Shoot, now I can't talk. All right.
I'm so excited to talk to you. And you just told me off camera, you are getting ready to move to Spain with your husband and your twin 3-year-old daughters. Is that right?
Yes.
That is so brave.
You're
just blowing it up.
It sounds crazy, especially when you say the word 3 and 2 3-year-olds. They are hilarious and wild. So yeah, it does sound like maybe a risky move. Maybe.
I'm all about risky moves, crazy moves. I blew up my life 2020 and moved to a small town in South Carolina and left the bright lights in big city, network news, and just hit a giant reset. So I'm all about that. And I'm all about giving men and women permission to try new things and new seasons. So I just want to say props to you. This is scary, but like really awesome. And why are you moving to Spain? Do you speak Spanish? Do you have relatives over there? You're just kind of like pushing that reset button and heading overseas. Why?
Yeah. I started learning Spanish when I was 10, and I've always loved that. They taught it in my school. I honestly wish I could have gone to like a fully bilingual school. It was just a class, just one class a day, but it was all growing up. And so I studied Spanish in, middle school and high school and college. And then I got to study abroad in Spain my junior year. My whole life changed there. That's where I, became a Christian. That's where, just like my whole life changed there. And so I've always had this real soft spot in my heart for Spanish and for Spain in particular. And so, I've always been like, I would love to live abroad. That would be a really awesome thing. I've always wanted my kids to learn Spanish young because I'm like, the earlier, the better.
Absolutely.
My
sponge right now is at capacity. I cannot absorb anything else. I wish I would have learned this when I was young.
Yes.
So kudos to you.
When we really started talking about this being a real opportunity, like a real possibility, was when we were looking into different childcare options, which is just a mess these days.
Oh my gosh.
So we had a wonderful combination of nannies for a while when my girls were first born, which was so special and so expensive.
So expensive. Mm-hmm.
Their schedules were changing, so we got into daycare. The only reason we got in is because they were opening a new one near our house, which was like amazing. And we got in line at 3:00 in the morning in order to get a spot. And we were still like 20th in line. It was crazy. Wrapping around the block. Crazy. It was crazy. So we got in there. It was still super expensive and we didn't really love it. And we're trying to figure out, like, what are our options? We have this spreadsheet. We're like, it's going to cost how much for the next however many years. And we started to, it was going to be several more years before our kids even went to kindergarten. And we're like, we're just going to keep living this like over and over and over again. What are they going to be learning colors for the next several years? Is there any other way to do this? And that's when I think I probably threw it out because I've been gunning for this forever. But I just kind of threw it out. What if we did something different? And what if we went to Spain? And we started crunching the numbers, and our cost of living is actually going to be reduced dramatically by. In the process, we're downsizing. We're downsizing everything. We're selling everything. We rented out our house. We're selling our cars. We're really, really downsizing. But they have like free public preschool. And it is going to be a massive weight off of our shoulders to be able to move across the world, which sounds crazy, but it's really true. So we leave in 3 months.
And how long do you anticipate staying there?
We're starting with a year and then ... So
so you're holding it loosely at this point.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm so proud of you, but also shame on America because our childcare costs are out of control. I talk a lot about this. Childcare costs in the majority of America, in over 30 states, it costs more to send your kid to daycare for a year than it does to send them to college for a year. In-state college, which is crazy. And if we really want to grow our economy, we have to pour money into families. So I'm just impressed by you for doing it, but also America, we got to do better by our people. So
for real,
do we believe in families or do we not?
Seriously, we're at a different daycare now that they are thriving at, thank goodness. But there's a little boy there that was curled up in the corner and crying and, sucking his thumb. And they were saying he just has a really hard time with drop off. And I was remembering, the first handful of months when my girls did too. And I'm like, there's nothing more distracting. There's nothing more gut wrenching. There's nothing harder than leaving your sobbing child at school and then having to go out to work. It's just not. And then to pay, I just can't. It's just
an exorbitant amount. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm right there with you. We lived in New York too, and the costs were out of control. And that's why so many women are leaving the workforce, in droves because they're weighing the options, and childcare costs outweigh their actual salary. So a lot of decisions that we shouldn't have to make, decisions that women and mothers in other countries aren't forced to make because there's so much support for family. But Stephanie, you have a huge heart for women that are kind of in this, what you call an everything era. And I guess I might be out of it. I'm 48, but it's that time in our life where we're growing our careers and we're growing our families. And it's it seems like every important decision we're going to have to make is made in that everything era. Can you tell us a little bit about that time in our lives and why you have such a heart for the women and men too that are in this stage too? Why do you have such a heart for this time?
Oh, man. Well, so I've been talking to women about decisions and transitions for like probably the last 10 years. And I've also been going through them in my own life, figuring out where I want to live and what I want to do for work and, who I want to marry and do I want to have kids? And if so, when? And then who takes care of them? And all these pieces, it kind of feels like this giant game of Tetris, that we're playing with our lives. I knew what it felt like, but I didn't realize that it was really a thing until I heard this statistic. It's this rare study of lifespan development that Boston University and the University of Michigan did a handful of years ago. And they found that 80% of our most defining life moments happen before we turn 35. And I was like, come again?
Wait,
and
what? That's so much pressure.
I know. And so, I mean, of course, there are outliers. Of course, there's, our stories are different. But I started to look into it and I noticed that our years to grow our family kind of peaks, especially biologically, in that time, kind of 25 to 35-ish. 25, I think, is when we start to go, oh, okay, I need to maybe start figuring out some things about my life. And then 35 range is when all of these things happen. Like the average age of a first-time marriage is in there. What happens in our first 10 years of work really has a big effect on our lifelong earning potential. And, there's just all this stuff that sort of crests during this time. And not only do these things crest, but there's so much pressure about what our lives are supposed to look like. And so I started looking into that too and found out and knew on some level that people have always had opinions about how women are to spend their lives, particularly their reproductive years. And so I'm just like, oh my gosh, I felt like I was going to pick up an ice cube and I started like yanking up this iceberg and going, there is so much here. This season of life is so important and stressful and hard and full of opinions. Like, how are we supposed to navigate all of this?
It almost doesn't seem fair. I remember having this conversation when I was still at ABC with a lot of my colleagues, male and women, and they're like, why do we have to grow our careers at the same time as we're growing our families? On some level, it doesn't seem fair. And it forces us to make decisions that we shouldn't have to make. And like you said, it's a lot of pressure. I love in your book, Create a Life You Love, which is a beautiful cover, by the way. My son was obsessed with it. He's like, it's so pretty. You say that the pressure to figure out what we want to do with our lives. I love this. It's like an Italian cooking class. There's a little too much wine. There's pasta everywhere. And everyone is flinging spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. It is a really tough time. And then the message is you got to figure it out. And then you got to choose kids or career. So I'm kind of glad I'm past it, but I wish I could go back and talk to my younger self and anyone that's in that phase too. But talk about that pressure.
It is so wild. I remember turning 30 felt like this sort of border crossing. My mom just turned 70. I think that this might be universal. Like every time you're going to get a new like tens digit, you're like, okay, where, there's a reckoning. Where am I in my life? And am I where I want to be? And am I where people expect me to be? And the thing about this season of life is that I feel like these are the announcement years. This 25 to 35-ish, we're having lots of showers in this time. It's baby showers, it's baby announcements, it's wedding showers and wedding announcements, it's new home announcements. Like all these things are really public and really big. So we have a lot of spectators and a lot of, backseat drivers kind of watching us do it. I talk about the Aunt Sharons of the world that corner you at Thanksgiving dinner and ask you, if you're seeing anyone special or, when you guys are finally going to get pregnant or, you're still dating, when are you guys going to get married? Or, I mean, there just are so many people watching you make these really big decisions.
And they tell you when I was your age, I was married and I had 4 kids.
Exactly.
Which doesn't help the situation.
And then they go, and you're not getting any younger, ...
Gosh.
You're like, thank you. Yes,
Appreciate
I know.
That. Really? I didn't know.
So I finally had to give it a name because I'm like, there's not a name for this. It's not a quarter life crisis. It's not a midlife crisis. It's just this time where we all have to figure out everything all at once. And there isn't a name for it. And so I was like, well, it feels like you're doing everything it's like let's call it the everything era. So I was talking to a friend of mine about that, and she said, it's sort of like there's this cosmic double booking of this season of life. And it's exactly what you were talking about. Like, why can't it be that we do career first and then kids second? The biggest career years of my life when I have 2 3-year-olds. Like, that's just, it's insane. It's insane.
Yeah. What do you tell that woman, that person who is in that everything era? You say that there are 3 things that you can do to kind of quiet the noise and really find out what you want out of life. And by the way, I know you mentioned it a little bit ago, you're going to Spain, but like you're walking the walk. So you're not just helping to guide us through this time and really stay true to ourselves. You're actually doing it. And that's really bold and courageous of you. But you're the type of person I want to hear from, because you're not just spewing pretty words, you're actually living it, and it's scary. So what are the 3 things that we can do to really quiet ourselves and find out what we want and not what Aunt Sharon wants for our lives?
Right. I'm so happy to get to write this book because I really need this book, and I've needed it and in every big decision of my whole life. I am a firstborn type A rule follower, people pleaser, perfectionist. Like, I like to get it right. I mean, I've spent my whole life asking for other people's advice and opinions, thinking that they surely know better than me, or looking to my right and left, seeing if I'm on the right track or seeing if I'm doing it right. My husband's a great cook. I'm not a great cook. And he'll say, well, just wing it. Like, you can just put whatever you want in the
you
pot.
Can't say that to a perfectionist.
No, I'm like, what do you mean I can put what goes in the pot? Like, just tell me what to do. That has caused a couple issues, just a couple in my life. One, that I have a hard time moving forward in things. I have a hard time making a decision because I don't want to make the wrong one. There are some times when the recipe I see isn't a recipe I want to replicate, but I don't know that there's a different one. So one of the biggest moments of my whole life was when I had a friend look me in the eye. I was like swirling in what ifs and trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And she took me by the shoulders and she kind of shook me and she said, Stephanie, you get to decide.
Yes.
You get to decide. This is your life. You are the one who has to live with the repercussions of it. There's not one right answer here. There's not one wrong answer here. You just have to decide. And that really honestly changed everything for me. And I say it all the time. My husband and I say it all the time to ourselves, to each other. And it's with big things like, what do I want to do for my career, or what country do I want to live in? Or small things like, how do we get our kids to eat enough vegetables? Like, I don't know, you decide. Like, there's not one right way to do most things. That's been like truly life-changing for me. So in the book, I talk about, these 3 things. And the first one is to really get quiet, to identify what the outside voices are that you're listening to and what they're saying. Because a lot of times, like, we walk into all kinds of different decisions with these different expectations. Some of them are really, really obvious. Some of them are quiet and unspoken, but no less understood. And then some of them are expectations we just sort of picked up along the way. It's like it's in the water. And until we can really identify what those are, it's really hard to figure out what you want if you're drowning in what you think you're supposed to want.
So the first thing is to get quiet.
It's to get quiet. Yeah. Then the second thing is to get inspired. And that's, I have people in the book, I have people look inwards and actually just listen to themselves for the first time, maybe ever. And I have some different exercises to walk them through that, because that's really hard. And then also to get inspired by looking at the way that other people are doing things. The more examples we can see of people doing life in all kinds of different ways, I think the more it reminds us that there isn't one right way to do this. So that's the second thing, is to get inspired. And then the last one is to get moving. Now that you've identified sort of that elephant in the room telling you what you have to do, and you've said, okay, no, I actually don't have to do it that way. Now that you've had some time to reflect on what kind of things you might actually want out of life or out of this area of your life, then in the last part, we talk about how to actually take steps forward, what that looks like. How do you take 1,000 million options and narrow them down to just one? So we walked through that. And then, there's also the piece of what happens when you really want something and it's not working out, or what happens when now you're married and you need to build a life you both want. And that group project is really challenging. That's kind of how I finish up the book, is talking about different times where this didn't really work out for us and what we did. And so it's cool because at the very end of the book, this is a process, creating a life you love, listening to your own voice, building a life that's authentic to you is something we're always going to be doing.
Yes.
And we're
not just in the everything era. I can testify to that. Like I blew up my life when I was, how old am I now? Like 45. And I'm so glad I did it. And I wish I could go back to that girl who was in her 30s building her career and building her family and say, this is a season and this is a chapter and you don't have to have it all figured out right now. Drop the perfectionism. You're going to have a lot of different chapters and a lot of different seasons. And this is what you're called to in this season. And it's just a season. I wish I could go back and tell her that because she put so much pressure on herself to figure it out, right? To be the perfect mom, to be the star employee. And I burn out because of those expectations that I had on myself and that society had for me too. Yeah. But I just wish I could have gone back and said, it's a season, right?
And you get to remake this.
And I feel like I'm in another everything era where I get to like give myself permission to try new things and realize that the outcome isn't the end game. For me, it's, am I willing to go into this new space and pursue this new thing and take the step of faith? And it's not always how it turns out. It's that I did it. And I don't have to live with the regret of not going for it, which for me is huge. And I challenge myself when I'm really scared. I say, what's the best thing that can happen if I go for this? And the best thing that can happen is usually I don't have to live with the regret of not going for it. But a lot of us are in a situation or a time where we have circumstances where, it limits the choice that we can make. So what do you tell that person who feels very limited by where they are in their circumstances?
When you hear the title, Create a Life You Love, it's really easy to think of like, here's how to push an easy button. Here's how to do 1, 2, 3, and everything's happy forever. You,
right?
Like, yes. But the way that I think about it is we all wear pants in our life. It's pants are just a reality of life.
I'm wearing big girl panties right now, okay? That's the era I'm in, okay, Stephanie? I'm wearing the big girl panties.
Amazing. All right. I love it. There's realities of our life. We all have to wear pants. But the thing about it is we don't have to wear those pants. Like you don't have to wear the ones in your closet that don't fit anymore or that are itchy or that are too small or that like you don't like or that someone gave you as a gift and you feel too bad to donate them. There are 1,000 bazillion different options of pants in the world. And it's not selfish or entitled or whatever to want to find pants that fit you. And the same way is true about life. And so there are so many things that we can't control, absolutely. But then there are still so many things that we can. Yeah. And that's what this is about. It's when you have a choice in your life about something small or something big, it's making it for yourself. Like a lot of times we make big decisions with our lives thinking we're going to make someone happy. And like your dad doesn't actually care. Like he really doesn't. He loves you either way. And how many times do we get ourselves so twisted up thinking that being someone else or living some sort of other life is going to earn us something. And it doesn't, or it earns us some points. But like, what are those points worth? Where do you cash them in? Like, they're just not worth very much.
Yeah, you get to decide. You do get to decide. What do you tell that woman, Stephanie, that feels a little bitter and resentful about where she is and trying to juggle everything? Maybe she's in that everything era, or maybe she's out of it, or maybe she's before it, but she's feeling a little resentful with everything that she has to juggle and manage. And this was a question from Donna. And it's a question that so many women in our community, the Carrie community with the company that I run to advocate for working moms and just community in general, they're feeling like, how do I juggle this without being angry and bitter about where I am in life and how much falls on me?
A couple of things. One, there needs to be an end game. I think about my best friend, Kelsey, who actually, we're moving to Spain with my best friend and her family, which makes it
you didn't tell me that.
So I know.
Community? That's amazing.
I know. We're going with my best friend. I think about her all the time. She is just a handful of years ahead of me in this mom journey, which also means I'm a handful of years ahead of her in my career. Like that's something that is, I think, really important to think about. It is we're on a path next to each other. And sometimes like one person's going a little bit further down this one and you're going a little bit further down this one. Like just because you're ahead of someone in life in one way or behind doesn't mean you're ahead or behind everywhere.
And it's your path and you get to decide, and everyone's path is going to look a little different.
Yes, it definitely is. I think about her though, because I've gotten to watch her and her husband figure out just a little bit ahead of us, who's going to work and who's going to take care of the kids and who's going to do what. And she didn't necessarily want to be a stay-at-home mom, but pretty quickly it became clear that like the math and the weight of their life worked better if she did stay at home for a while. The thing that they made clear though was that this is not forever. And they had like, this is for this many years, or this is for one more, this is a chapter. And then, after a while, she ended up going back to school. She's a counselor now, which is so cool. She is working more than her husband is. He's in charge of more stuff at home. Like their roles have really kind of flipped. And I think, when we're planning our lives, when we're creating lives we love, one of the hard things is that we're looking short term and we're looking long term kind of at the same time. And we have to figure out how to make decisions without really sacrificing all of short term or all of long term. That also means that there are trade-offs. Sometimes we have to trade off things in the short term for the sake of the long term. Sometimes we trade off things in the long term for the sake of the short term. And so my question is,
that's good.
Like,
Stephanie.
What do you want to be doing? And how can we get you there soon? Maybe not today, but soon.
I really like that. And I appreciate your honesty that there's going to be sacrifices because yes. So when we decided to move to a small town, I left TV news. My husband's still working at the same company, but in a different capacity. And I feel like we had to mourn the loss of that. And yes, there have been some sacrifices. We love where we are in life and we're able to be really present with our kids and we're great partners. And I get to take my kids to school and pick them up for the most part and go to their sporting events. But that does come with the sacrifice of I don't have a full-time job. I don't have a full-time income. I do, there are parts of me that do miss the insanity of TV news. And, that was a part of my life for so long that I had to say goodbye to. And so there are sacrifices, involved too, but that's just part of life. I have to look at the blessings around us. We're living the life that we want and we have created a life that we want. That doesn't mean that you can't mourn for what you lost in the process, but that's all part of it. And it doesn't mean I'm saying goodbye to that too. 10 years down the road when my kids are all out of the house, who knows, I might want to get back into TV news. But if I don't, oh well, I don't have to go back. I can just keep moving forward. But I think that's a really important point that you brought up, that there's always going to be sacrifice involved when you create the life that you want.
Yeah. In the section where we talk about like getting moving, once you've kind of narrowed down to, I think I'm kind of looking at A or B or C, maybe these options. I walk you through this exercise to figure out with each of them, what are you gaining and what are you giving up? And I like that better than pro and con because sometimes the things you're gaining are like, for you, getting to be with your kids, that's a huge gain. Getting to have
my husband and I, both of us, like
it's really cool. Getting to be together as a family, like, better for your mental health, I would seriously guess. But also that's like the give up was really heavy too for you. And that's the case sometimes is, the gains outweigh the give ups, but like not by that much sometimes. And there's something to be mourned about that. There's a lot to be mourned about that, but it doesn't mean it's the wrong decision, you know?
And like you've said, it is a chapter, it's a season too, no matter where you are. And I know our life right now is not going to look like our life in 10 years when the kids are out of the house. Well, who knows? My older two say that our youngest is going to be living in our basement till he's 50. So God knows what our life's going to look like. But it's like, I don't try to plan the next 30 years out. I'm just going chapter by chapter. Season by season. And that gives me a lot of permission. This has been so great. I'm so excited for you. I almost want to, I want to check in with you 6 months into your Spanish expedition, if I can. I want to hear how it's going, the good, the bad, the ugly. And I want to hear how they treat families over there because I don't know. I've done so much research on this and I know other countries really, they have just this collective approach to family that I am my brother's keeper. They really treat families so much better in policy and attitude. So I'd love to hear your perspective on how they value and treat families too. After
I would
living abroad.
love to share. It's so funny to think about that. I'm like, oh my gosh, 6 months in it, like, who will I be? I don't have any idea, but it's so exciting to think about. And we're just doing it one step at a time, things, our life, we really built it on purpose here in Nashville, doing work, living in the house we were in. And then we kind of got to a point where it just wasn't working anymore. And it took us a while to realize that. Yeah. But then we're like, okay, that's hard, but it's time to make some new decisions. These decisions don't fit us anymore. So we are.
And here you are creating a life you love, one that's kind of freaking you out right now, but you're creating the life that you love.
Yes, right. Yes, exactly. That is the absolutely perfect way to say that.
Oh, it's awesome. It's so good to get to know you. And I'm so excited to stay in contact with you. And I'm really grateful that you were able to share this wisdom with our audience today. Thanks for talking about it, Stephanie.
Thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm. So I usually record these conversations and then I go back and listen to them about 6 times and I take copious notes. And here's what stood out to me from that conversation. First of all, you get to decide. We get to decide those decisions and we can live with the pros and the cons. As she said, the gains and the give up. So what are you gaining and what are you giving up? I like that, rephrasing that instead of the pro and con. So what are you gaining? What are you giving up? And the 3 steps: get quiet, get inspired, and move. Also, I promise you guys, we will check in with her maybe in the next 6 months, a little bit longer, to see how things are going in Spain. So much of my heart is passionate about supporting families, supporting working moms, and America does not do a great job of that. So I'll be really intrigued to see what it's like in Spain culturally, what the policies are like, how she feels supported as a mother in another country. But America, we got to do better. So we're going to check in with Stephanie. And real quick, you guys have been writing reviews. You've been rating the show. You've been sharing. Thank you so much. If you can take some time, if you haven't done so, write a quick review. Tell me what you think about the show. DM me. Let me know what you want to talk about. And next week, hold on to your seats because we have a fantastic conversation. It's actually going to be a 2-parter with David Thomas, who is a counselor and therapist. He specializes in counseling young boys and their families. And all I can say is that I understand my sons, my brother, and my husband so much more after having this conversation. It's a 2-parter on how we can connect and understand our tween and teen boys. You don't want to miss it. I promise you, these boys in your life, they're just going to make a whole lot more sense because right now they just don't. Let's just be honest about it. Thanks for joining the show today and for listening. And I'm so grateful for you. You guys know that my DMs are always open if you guys have feedback on what you want to talk about, and we'll continue to do that and see you next week on the show. I know you guys thought you were done with me, but not quite yet. I have one more thing to tell you about. If you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, don't forget to subscribe to the show. I don't want you to miss a single beat or a single conversation. And remember, my DMs are always open. Tell me what you want to talk about.